welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Gordon Denlinger of the 99th District in Lancaster County. Welcome to this update, and good to have you join our show. Today I'm at the Meadow Springs Farm, and joining me today are some special guests. Very much looking forward to what they can share with us. Joining us are the Bollingers, Tom Bollinger, father, and Andrew Bollinger, Andy, son, and also John Fry, Executive Director of the Center for Dairy Excellence, a noted expert in all things dairy, we should say. So with that introduction, I wanted to invite the Bollingers to kind of share with us the history of the farm and how your family came to be here and sort of the progression over time, if you would. And I guess Dad, Tom, we'll ask you to kind of kick that off.
Thank you, Gordon, for being here and allowing us to be a part of your show. The history of our farm goes back to probably the late 40s when my father took this farm over from his dad in the, I think, mid to late 40s. And when I graduated from high school, which would have been 1971, is when I came into the business. So I really never left this homestead. Here is where I was born, where I was raised, and I'm still here today. In 71, when I graduated, I started farming with Dad, and my brother would have been here at that time, my brother Cliff. In 79, he moved on to the Midwest, into Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I went into partnership with my dad, which would have been probably in about 86, I think is when I went into partnership with him. We formed the Meadow Spring Farm partnership. And then as time went on and my children grew up, and my son Andy here, who was very interested in farming, I always knew that he loved farming. He played farming from the time he could crawl. He always, that was his desire and his love. And he graduated from high school in 1995 and went on to a dairy management school in Minnesota, came home, and that's when we started to expand and improve our dairy operation. Prior to that, my father was more of a beef and steer feeder operation here. We always had 20 cows. Mm-hmm. Currently today, our numbers are a lot larger than that. I'm going to let Andy do that. But again, going into the history, then just as Andy got married and his interest in farming continued to grow, and realizing that my wife and I were getting older, just this past year we transitioned this farm to Andy and his wife Andrea.
Okay.
And the rest of our children in our family, we have two other sons and a daughter, a son Richie and a son Phil, and a daughter Valerie, and they each have their careers currently, and the farm is open to them if they ever want to come back to it.
Okay, so
we did build that into our transition part of our turning the farm over to Andy. We did let it open for any other of our children who, if they have that interest, they can join it.
Very good, very good. And Andrew, I'd like to ask you a few questions, if I can, about the operations of the farm. Give us the vital statistics, if you will, of this production agricultural operation here.
Sure. We are currently milking 360 cows. Our total cow numbers, we are around 410 adult cows. And then we raise all of our replacement animals, which that is all the female calves that are born. We keep them and raise them from birth to till they're ready to give milk. So total cow numbers or animal numbers are close to 800 that are raised on this farm.
Okay.
Our cows give around 80 pounds of milk a day, which translates to close to 10 gallons.
Okay, and that's 3 milkings?
That's milking 3 times a day.
Okay.
We have about 10 employees, some full-time, some part-time, that help us do that every day, and we also grow all the crops that our cows eat.
How many acres do you have here on the farm?
We rent a fair amount of ground as well, but our total farmed ground is around 650 acres this year.
650, and you can grow enough to take care of feed needs? Okay.
Very close.
Very good. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Dad, you're enjoying seeing this move on to the next generation here, and
it's a real pleasure and a privilege to see it go on.
Very good.
I said we would not have, my wife and I often say that we probably wouldn't be milking cows today anymore if it wouldn't be for the next generation having that interest. And
very good.
It was an easy transition. When you have a child who is really interested in agriculture and in the operation, it's an easy thing to transition the farm to the next generation. At least it was for us.
Wonderful. And John, I'd like to shift to you for a minute. Obviously, the Bollingers have shared their transition story. Is this a fairly typical account of what you run into as you're talking to farmers and how farms are passed from one generation to the next?
So I'd like to say yes, State Representative Denlinger. Dairy farming isn't unlike other businesses and other industries, other family businesses that want to transition the business to the next generation. The next generation may or may not be interested, but if they are interested, how do you cross that bridge from bringing the next generation in? And dairy is much like that. You look around this operation, you can see we've already heard there's 600 plus acres involved. There's a lot of cattle. It's a capital intensive business. And so transitioning it perhaps is more complex for dairy than other agriculture commodities, and maybe more complex than even other family businesses and other industries. So is this normal? Not sure that it's normal, but it's not abnormal. It's an exciting industry, and to see families working together and be intentional about bringing the next generation in and all of the complexities involved is really exciting for us. Because for dairy to continue to survive in Pennsylvania, that has to happen. So
true. John, I know with the Center for Dairy Excellence, you've done so much with farm profitability, and obviously beyond everything we see here, there is a business at the core of all of it that's its own world of challenges, and your center has provided a lot of tools for farmers that are out there to do farm sustainability being at the heart of all of that. Maybe you and I can kind of talk with the Bollingers a little about the nature of that business. Obviously you have your revenue side and you have your expense structure, cost structure as well. So maybe both of us can ask some questions here, but I'm going to ask the Bollingers about, let's talk revenue first of all. Obviously you're linked up with Clover, is your sales connection for your product. How has that relationship run over time, and what particular challenges are there on the pricing or revenue side of the equation?
Our relationship with Clover, which first of all, Clover, for the consumer, Clover is in Reading, Pennsylvania, and they strictly bottle their milk there. And, locally, you can buy it just for a sales pitch. You can buy Clover milk at Redner's stores. But we have a very good relationship with them. Since it's a private company, we actually we truck our own milk to the dairy every other day. We ship a trailer load of milk there. So we have a real good relationship. We get into the plant, like I said, every other day, so we are in pretty good direct contact with them.
Now you mentioned to me, if I can interrupt there, you're a Class 1 producer here, which designates a certain level of quality. Can you explain, and maybe I should ask, this is to the group, classing, how that works?
I can let John maybe explain the classing, and then I'll talk about the quality a little bit.
Great discussion point. When we talk about classes of milk, it's not directly related to quality. What it's more directed at is what is that raw milk used for? So the milk on this farm goes almost exclusively to fluid drinking milk, which we refer to as Class 1 milk. And then obviously there's a lot of milk in this country that goes for what we call soft products like yogurt, Greek yogurt, traditional yogurt, ice cream, and then of course cheese and butter and powder products as well. This milk, I believe, on this farm, Tom, and you can speak to that, goes primarily to Class 1 fluid drinking milk. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Very
You
good.
mentioned quality a little bit, just to reinforce that. Quality is important in all classes. I mean, the quality, every dairy farmer is paid a premium for quality. We have a certain bacteria level we need to achieve to be able to get a quality bonus. If it goes above a certain level, they will actually reject your milk. It can be totally rejected because it's not fit for consumption in any form.
So you're not dropping down a class. You can't sell that
class. If quality isn't there, it doesn't go into any class.
Gotcha.
For any dairy
It's
product, it's rejected.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
I might just add to that. I think consumers would be interested to know that I know in fluid drinking milk processing, milk goes through as many as 17 tests between the time that it arrives on the plant and ends up on the store shelf. You've heard some of those numbers, Tom, and I'm sure can maybe speak to.
I know some of the quality things that we have to achieve. It's tested at the dairy as our truck pulls into the dairy. It's always checked for for medication,
antibiotics.
for antibiotics. Yeah, you might want to state it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It has happened to us. We've had a load about 6 months ago that was rejected for antibiotics. We goofed up. A cow was treated, and there was a lot of miscommunication went on, and somehow that happened. That treated cow's milk went into the tank, and it was rejected. I mean, it was.
So
It
what
happens.
you're saying is
It
those
happens.
things are caught
They
Yes,
are.
they are
long
caught.
before the processing even begins.
Yes, they pull a sample, they check it. You know, it's either accepted or rejected at the processing plant.
And then
It's a safe
obviously in the revenue stream, the question is, we're talking about a commodity here, the price fluctuates, and of course you sell milk by hundredweight, 100 pounds of milk is the pricing structure. What's the recent history over the last few years with regard to the hundredweight price? Maybe Andy, we'll turn to you on
there's
that
been a lot of ups and downs. The year 2009 was the worst year in dairying as far as low revenue in about 30 years.
Okay.
Since then, it's been fairly strong, but it seems to fluctuate on about a 3-year cycle, that it goes up and down because of the whole supply and demand and market situation.
So the price goes up and people rush more cows into production, and then you start to see it go the other way. Is that a typical, your 3-year cycle pattern?
Seems that way.
Not unlike any commodity or any industry, again, which I love to sometimes lump dairy into those others because it's not different in some respects, in that the higher the price, the more opportunity to produce, and at some point that equilibrium of supply and demand happens and prices begin to retreat in the other direction. And you're right, Andy, in 2009, lowest in 30 years. And it's not uncommon for prices to change even 100% from high to low.
Right.
I think the last several years, the high feed costs made dairying very difficult.
Okay.
We had a drought in the Midwest
Right,
back in
right.
2011, it would have been, or 12, and that just caused very difficult for producers here in the Northeast, especially when we're looking at $7, $8, $9 corn, $14 soybeans, and unheard of prices to me. You know, if I look back in my time of farming, it was just unheard of. And of course, our milk price didn't go up with that.
Right, so people were squeezed in the
Yeah,
equation
it's
there.
very difficult.
Tom, if I can even just follow up on that. So when you look at the ledger on running a dairy business, what percent of the total cost is related to feed in your estimate, maybe over a couple of year period? Does it approach
better.
50%?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
would say it does, yeah.
Yes. I was
It's
gonna
it's
say-
by far the largest expense that we have.
Okay. But our friends and neighbors who are watching this will recognize we've had an incredible year for corn out through this area. A lot of good rain, good temperatures, and so forth. With commodity pricing of feed, do you anticipate a drop in the corn price and soybean price across this region?
At this time, yes, it
Yeah,
is.
okay.
It will probably be dictated a little bit by the amount of or how large the crop is across the whole United States. But in this area, corn is plentiful.
Very strong. And you're, because you're growing your crop here, you're insulated a little bit from some of that up and down.
Yeah.
Is that
Right,
fair to say?
The only product that we really buy in is our protein products, which would be in the form of soybean,
Okay.
soybean meal, and some different byproducts from the soybean products. We grow all our corn and all of our forages, but we do not grow any soybean products.
Okay, and soy is also coming down with the good crop year we've had, or where
Not
are
as
we there?
Not as much. Soy is in great demand overseas. China is
Yeah,
our biggest importer of soybeans, and that is the one crop that market seems to stay very strong.
okay.
And I think we'll see that continue to be a higher priced commodity that we have to purchase.
You know, you raise an interesting point, and I want to defer to John on this one. China and the international markets are starting to really impact our family farms here in the area. What's the picture overseas? I understand we're selling more and more of our milk protein overseas. Can you bring us up to speed there?
We are, you're right. Over the last 8 to 10 years, I mean, we've gone from exporting very little dairy products out of this country to today exceeding really 15% of our nation's milk supply being exported around the world. And China continues to move up the ladder in terms of a final destination for our U.S. dairy. Canada and Mexico are actually the two number one and number two destinations for U.S. dairy, with China and and some of those other Asian regions being the number 3 spot for U.S. dairy, and it is becoming a pretty significant part of the dairy production system here in this country. Is that milk production continues to grow, in part because new products are hitting the supermarket shelves, particularly in the yogurt line of products, but we're also exporting a lot of dairy as well.
Okay, very good. And then we've talked about some of the revenue and the markets and all that. Let's talk about the expense side of the ledger. You got to manage that very tightly when you're in business. We were talking about crops, the feed being probably your biggest single expense. What other items work into your cost structure with the farm
I think
here?
the next one would be energy.
Okay.
We've seen, as all people have seen, energy costs have just gone up drastically, and I think that was been our next one on the list. It's been very challenging.
Okay.
Of course, when we go for repairs and for parts, everything has been driven by the energy prices in production, producing equipment and repairs. It all gets passed on down to us, and so it's been a little on the challenging side.
Okay, and you're purchasing that energy in diesel fuel, electricity?
Diesel fuel, electricity.
Yeah, okay.
So
Sorry.
we just try to be more efficient. You think about when you go for repairs, just for a small example, which truck do I jump in? Do I get into V8 or do I go into the four-cylinder? That's little things you think about.
Sure, managing that's important. Yeah.
Andy, how many employees on the farm? Because I'm sure labor is another pretty significant part of the expense side of running a business of this size.
Right. We have approximately 10, and that, like you said, yes, we just managing that labor to try to keep that cost down, because you want to do the best job possible, and there's always new management techniques that we can be doing to try to improve the comfort of our cows, and translates into giving more milk. And so there's that line of how many people do we really need to do the job the best. In the past year, about a year ago, we built a new milking parlor where we milk the cows, and that has significantly impacted our labor costs. It has reduced them considerably. So yeah, labor is a large cost as well.
And actually, that's a question, John, I would kind of throw your way as well. There's a lot of discussion about the immigrant community and farm labor. I hear about that as a representative. I'm sure you connect through the Center for Dairy Excellence. But we do recognize that immigrant labor is involved in the collection of a lot of our crops. Is that something that you're hearing from farmers across the state?
Well, depending what part of this country that you're farming in determines to what extent immigrant labor is being used on farms. We hear some estimates to the tune of 2/3 to 3/4 of the milk in the United States is actually harvested by immigrant labor on dairy farms around the country. In Pennsylvania, it may not be quite that high. It may be 50%. But my point in stating that is that immigrant labor is really important to agriculture. It's really important to dairy industry here in Pennsylvania. So having a policy that allows us to have guest workers on our farms is really important.
Okay, key component. Yeah.
Very key component.
Very good. A particular challenge that those of us at the state level are dealing with right now is transportation issues, and I want to get into that and then talk about some of your other regulatory connections with Department of Agriculture and so forth. But let's go to transportation for a minute if we can. Of course, in Harrisburg, there's a lot of debate about a transportation package, and I think it's important for folks in the area here to understand some of the impacts that you're experiencing through the weight restrictions that have gone up on bridges here recently, others that are proposed, and just really the overall state and quality of our roads. Can you speak to that issue for this farm right here?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that because of 2 days ago opening up our local newspaper and realizing that our bridge that we cross every day is going to have a weight restriction on it. Not quite sure how we're going to deal with that. I was very shocked. This bridge that we're crossing was built in my lifetime, so it's. Some people think I'm getting old, but I don't think I am. But, it's only a 40-some-year-old bridge, and now they throw a weight restriction on it. And most of our waste, our manure waste that we need to spread onto our cropland, which we have to cross that bridge to access probably about 2/3 of our acreage.
Okay.
Has to cross that bridge.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of at a loss as far as do I cross it illegally? What do we do? I mean, to go out around is not feasible.
So you're sharing a story that I've just heard all over the area, that the routing of trucks, vehicles is going to be very problematic. Now, does your milk product, does it also go over that bridge in a tanker, or does that head another
No,
way?
I go the opposite. We
You go the
actually
other way.
go east on Meadow Valley Road,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we're okay that direction.
But if it were to go over that bridge, you'd be talking,
That
you have to
wouldn't be-
split the load or just find another route. That's
It'd
where
be it's a lot easier to go around things with a truck like that, which we own. Like I said, it's only a load every other day. When I'm talking about hauling our dairy waste, our dairy manure, that's several hundred loads that go out in the spring and several hundred loads in the fall that have to go that direction. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's a big issue for us right now.
Okay. Sometimes I think we think about the safety aspect, but there's a huge commercial aspect tied to these bridges as well. So I think it's important to highlight that. John, are you hearing from farmers across the state on this issue?
Well, we are, and we know that every single day of the year, 600 tanker truckloads of milk are hauled somewhere across the state of Pennsylvania. So these transportation issues are really important and really affect the dairy industry potentially. And just hearing Tom talk about hundreds of loads of organic waste from this farm really actually just heightens the importance of having something that is friendly to agriculture and yet accommodates business development in the coming decades, because it's essential to the state of Pennsylvania, obviously, and
Very
essential
good.
to agriculture.
Yes. And then some of the other issues that are out there, the Chesapeake Bay Initiative, of course, is a big one. That's potential impacts to ag already. Folks are changing practices. And I think it's important to highlight how proactive farms have been in that regard. You know, there's obviously municipal waste, but then ag's a big part of the equation. I wonder if you can share with us some of the practices that you put in place to manage water runoff, stormwater, and so forth. Because I think folks need to understand what's being done currently. If you can share that with us.
We've done a number of different things over the years. I credit my father and his father for being proactive years ago already with some different things in our farming, in the field farming or the field cropping operation, by placing waterways in areas where there's high runoff, and by strip farming. What I mean by that is where you'll have a field of corn and then a field of an alfalfa field or some sort of a grass strip, and alternate back and forth, which slows down any water flow during the growing season. Also in the wintertime, or we try to have a cover crop planted on almost all of our fields, so that ground is stabilized. In the past year, we also did a runoff control project here around our farm buildings. We put in a system that will capture all of our clean water that doesn't touch any place where there might be manure, and that takes that clean water straight to the creek. And that way it keeps that separate.
Now you have a stream running right down through here.
We do.
But the days of cows being down in the stream are probably long gone at this point. Is that fair to say?
On this farm, yes.
Okay.
I remember as a child sliding down the stream bank, you know, in the mud, you know, and
Sure.
no trees along the creek. Well, probably about 20 years ago, we did stream bank fencing,
Okay.
and our whole stream bank is just totally different. Now it has mature trees. You wouldn't even know there's a stream there if you didn't. I mean, you'd have to walk through this thick vegetation to be able to get to our stream. So it definitely has. I'm a real fan of stream bank fencing
Very
throughout
good.
the whole state or the whole county. I really think it's a good practice. And
I'm seeing that same kind of proactive attitude with a lot of farmers in our area. John, I'm sure you're out working with farmers regularly. What's your take on the attitude toward these kinds of issues, particularly Chesapeake Bay Initiative?
Well, what we hear routinely is is farmers, and we'll say in this case particularly dairy farmers, will remind us routinely that they are the original environmentalists. And they say that with great pride, and they own it to the extent that Tom just talked about. And increasingly farmers, they understand that, and they are, to your point, being very proactive about saying, yeah, we are the original environmentalists. We're the ones that have really taken the great deal of interest in making sure that we're doing things that are right for the environment today and certainly into the future.
I want to ask you another question, John, if I can, about some excellent resources and tools. And for our farmers out there on profitability, transition planning, and so forth, can you share with us, folks go out to your website, Center for Dairy Excellence, what they might find in the way of resources that are available?
Very briefly, the Center for Dairy Excellence is in our 10th year. We're a nonprofit that is located at the Department of Agriculture, and the sole focus of our work is really business development and economic development. Our goal is to keep a dairy industry in Pennsylvania because the dairy is about 45% of the ag economy here in the state. So as dairy goes, so agriculture goes in a really big way. So if you visit our website, you'd see a number of tools from business planning resources, decision-making resources, risk management type of resources, and finally, farm succession and transition resources, because we know that dairies are nearly 100% family businesses, and for the business to be successful, the family has to really be able to have some tools to work through that planning process.
Very good.
It's a big part of what we do.
Key information for folks that's available out there. And to the Bollingers, obviously this shows somewhat about the next generation and passing farms on for the future. You took a big step in that regard with preserving your farms, and I'm wondering if you could just share with us your vision for the future, your family and so forth, in the remaining roughly minute or so that we have. Should I go to the senior member here?
Well, I think, I feel really blessed to be able to have the next generation to pass it on to. And I hope at some point Andy can say the same thing, whether it's one of his children or, a future son-in-law or however. I just hope it can continue on. It's a great place to raise a family. Yes, it is a business today, definitely, but it's still a fantastic place to work together as a family and to watch life, come and go, and see your plants and your crops grow, and to harvest them, and it's just a real blessing to be able to do that.
And last thought, Andrew, you're the next generation.
I just feel very blessed to be entrusted with what we have here, and yes, I too hope that to continue on this farm for years to come, and I would love to see somebody else come along that I can pass it on to, and just keep being a positive impact in our local community as well.
Wonderful. It is a stewardship for the future.
It sure is.
No doubt. Very good. Well, I want to thank my special guests today. That's all the time we have today, but again, a thank you to John Fry, Center for Dairy Excellence, and Tom and Andrew Bollinger here at the Bollinger Farm. I so much appreciate their being with me. I'm State Representative Gordon Denlinger of the 99th District in Lancaster County. If you have any issue of concern on state government related matters, please contact me at my district office. The contact information will appear on your screen in a moment. Thank you for joining, and please join next time for Legislative Report.